Hey, I'm Rivky Gross, and I'm here with my co-host, Hani Hecht Frankel. Welcome to our brand new podcast, The Possibility in the Universe.
We are so humbled and delighted to have you with us. Our podcast is real life in real time, where we embark on curious conversations that expand our awareness and capacity for all that is possible.
Hit subscribe to stay connected with us and to be notified when we drop our next episode. Listen until the end of this episode, where we will share more about ourselves, the work we do in this world, and ways to stay in touch. Enjoy listening.
Hello, and welcome to the 4th episode of The Possibility in the Universe, the possibility in communication. Moving into heart-open and heart-led conversations with both ourselves and others. I am so excited to be here with my co-host, Rivky Gross, and would love for you to drop us into what we're here to talk about today.
Let's do it. Hi, Hani.
Hey.
So I'm going to begin dropping us into compassionate conversation with a writing by Jeff Brown that I loved so much and that I'd love to offer all of you. So let's begin with that. There is a significant difference between heart-to-heart conversation and a projection-to-projection conversation. When we speak to and from the heart, we stand a real chance of making relational progress. Our vulnerabilities are exposed and embraced, and our true feelings rise into view. When we speak from our projections of self, of other, we are more likely to make things worse, because projected dynamics are rooted in assumption and misinterpretation. And when we speak from that place, new projections are birthed. Projection begets projection. Vulnerability begets vulnerability. So if you are planning to have a meaningful conversation, spend some time beforehand doing all that you can to see through the veil that is real. The real you, the real them, the real issues between you. And then connect from that place. Speak from your heart, hear with your heart, inquire from your heart. It may feel scary, but miracles happen when two souls meet on a bridge between their hearts. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. What is a heart-to-heart? We're here to talk about what is a heart-to-heart conversation and what is a projection-to-projection conversation.
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial to myself and to all of those listening to drop into some examples of where what we believe almost is true. And so we are in some way like defending a truth that we truly believe, but ultimately it's really a projection, and how that kind of makes it murky in actually having the desired need to be met, because I'm asking you for something and I think that I'm making myself really clear, but ultimately I might be activating the projection in you.
So let's take that into example. Yeah. So an example of a projection conversation could be something like, you never spend time with me, or you don't like me, or you don't care about me, instead of saying, I want to spend time with you, or I feel hurt, or I feel sad, or I feel confused about the status of our relationship, right? So a projection is the experience of sharing an assumption rather than sharing the real vulnerability, the real feeling inside.
Yeah, and I guess I'm feeling into the reason why I may be afraid to really speak from the place of that vulnerability is the need that I am invested in, that you will hear me or that you will be able to give me what I need. And so my ask is kind of attached to this end result, that it will be met by you in the way that I need. And that's so scary. And it's also really riding on the way that you're going to receive me is the way that I'm going to feel. So asking for what's outside of me to fill what's inside of me. And so when that's the dynamic, I feel less safe to do that, because now really ultimately I'm hoping to receive from you what I really need to possibly receive from myself. And so I just move into the projection, because then I'm able to defend myself before I even get started. And here I am not actually being heard.
Yeah. A projection feels safer. A projection feels safer to us, especially when we feel afraid that if we share our heart's real need, we won't be able to be met. And when we're also holding the belief that need needs to be met by the outside,
Yeah.
which is the way that many humans are wired, because it's the way that communication has been for such a long time. So much projection, so much missing need projected on you or somebody else to fill. So it makes so much sense to be in this dynamic. And part of compassionate communication is having compassion for the parts of us that haven't or don't at times compassionately communicate, because we only know what we know when we know it. And we do what we do when we know what we know, as Maya Angelou says, and when we know better, we do better. So there's something really important about beginning this conversation with that orientation. Yes.
And compassion to ourselves, for it's a deep understanding that this was the programming that we were taught, is that we should receive what we need from outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
In the constant ways that are like parents were the ones who guided us, whether something was right or wrong or good or bad. And so much of how we were taught to look outside of ourselves to receive the things that we need. And I think that what we're offering right now in this possibility of communication is to mature into a higher frequency of communication with ourselves, and to soften the space of what we need others to fill, so that we can bring it back to ourselves and be able to really offer those needs to ourselves, from the abundance of what we have to offer to our own needs inside of us.
Yeah. 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 And there's something about projection to projection conversation that is different than what we're going to be discussing today, which is heart to heart conversations, which is saying what I really need, saying what's really going on. And the things that we've learned in society and culture and family around subtle manipulation, right? To get our needs met. Subtle ways in which we say things that we know is going to be responded to in a certain way. Like, you never show up for me is something that often triggers guilt, which then often triggers other to show up. So what we're offering in the possibility of the universe is the possibility to enter into a different dance. So it's a possibility to stop dancing the dance that we've known for such a long time and shift, whether we are the person who does the perhaps subtle manipulation, or we're the person who can be easily subtly manipulated. And when I use that word, when I say manipulated, I don't mean it in a bad or insidious or wrong way. I mean it in like literally, the word manipulate is like the word to like shift, right? So shifting from that space to more heart-centered conversations, asking for what we really want, and the vulnerability in that knowing or need, and the vulnerability in knowing that ultimately it will not get met always from the outside, is a really incredible cosmic shift. And when we change the game, the game changes. And when we change the dance, everyone around us has to shift their dance move. So there's something really exceptional about being that person, to be the possibility in the universe for everyone possibly around us.
Yeah, it's making me think of an experience I had with my father. And so there was a moment in time that he had some heart issues and ended up in the hospital. And it got me really scared. I got really scared. Like, dad being in the hospital is a scary thing. And my immediate thought was, if my dad was to be taken today, is this the relationship that I wanted with him? Is this what I truly desired for us and the connection for us? And so I thought about it and I was like, Baruch Hashem, he got better and he was home and everything's good.
Thank God.
And I wanted to have this connection. I wanted to start building something deeper with him. And so I very elegantly made a plan to reach out to him and ask him if he wanted to learn with me once a week. So that way I can, in some way, manipulate, right? The word that we just used before, a circumstance that will fulfill the desire of my need. But luckily, I was working with a very wise guide at the time who helped me be in my need here. The thing that I wanted, the desire that was here was, you don't want to learn with your dad. You want to be in deep, meaningful connection with your dad. Can you ask him from that place, from the vulnerable place that is from your heart to his heart, and speak from that place? And it was definitely vulnerable. It's definitely a much more vulnerable place to ask for the thing that you desire. And it was so magical to allow it to myself, to ask from the place of my need, to speak it from my heart to his, and for it to be received in turn. And now, every Thursday morning when I learn with him, this is not just about the learning, but every day we are intentionally in the reality of deepening our connection together, because that's the energy that we brought into it. And so that to me just felt like, first of all, a deep understanding for how vulnerable that is, but also what we receive when we really come from the place inside of us, both for myself, which is what I desired. I was honoring my own need and desire, and for what it allowed for us. When we lean into that space each time, we get to learn Torah, but really we're leaning into the space of a deeper connection of the two of us together in our relationship.
It's such a beautiful story. And you really were able to lean in to what is compassionate. How can I compassionately communicate with myself with the help of your coach? How can I compassionately communicate with myself to really understand what my real need is and what my real feeling is, and then communicate that in a way that brings so much more connection than, and you would have got your need met in some way.
Absolutely.
But in a whole new way, in a whole new frequency, did you get your need met? And are you continuing to reap the reward of that desire? Wow, hon. Wow. 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 Yeah, I want to talk more about heart-to-heart conversations versus projection to projection conversations, because for some of you that guys that are listening, this might be a very new conversation and this might not, but I know for myself that every time I think about it, I find more subtleties and more ways in which communication can be projection versus heart to heart. And when we shift into this paradigm of compassionate communication, there is so much change that can happen on not just at our individual level, but again, like a cosmic level. If we think about it on all levels of consciousness, there are so many ways and environments and cultures in which compassionate communication can shift in the largest way, like world peace. If we really truly would begin to listen to ourselves, and we know that peace begins within.
Yes.
And we know that by changing, really to change the world, we begin by shifting ourselves and our embodiment. So,
and our awareness, most of
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah.
I saw this beautiful quote that I screenshotted from Instagram. I unfortunately don't have the credit for it, so,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to share it anyways because it is so profound. And what it said is, your perception of me is a reflection of you. My reaction to you is an awareness of me.
Mm, mm, mm.
I'm going to say it one more time because it's like to let it drop in.
Mm-hmm.
Your perception of me is a reflection of you, and my reaction is an awareness of me. Do you want to break that down?
Yeah, start by telling us what it means to you, honey.
It's really being able to start to, with compassion, make distinctions so that I can understand compassion both for myself and for you. So when I understand that what you are labeling or blaming or pointing a finger at me is really possibly what it is that you are projecting outward. And it's really
Yeah.
of the way that you judge yourself most of all.
Mm, mm, mm.
And my awareness in that, in my reaction, is how much of that I am taking accountability and responsibility for.
Mm.
Am I the thing that you are projecting onto me? Or possibly is just something that's triggering something inside of you, and I can have compassion that possibly my behavior is pushing something inside of you that isn't comfortable. Okay, it's making me think of this. I had a judgment towards a family member.
Mm-hmm.
The judgment that I had was, you're being so naive.
Mm.
You're being so naive. And because you're being naive, you're not taking responsibility for what you need to be taking responsibility for. That was my judgment. So my perception of you is that you are naive and you are not taking responsibility for something. What if I reflect that back into myself, which at that time I was working with another coach who helped me see this, and she spinned it back at me and she said, where are you being naive? Where are you being naive? If I am, and I love this recovery statement or thought. It's like, when I point a finger at you, I have three fingers pointing back at me. This
Mm.
idea of the weight that I am putting outward, the blame that I'm pushing outward, and the possibility to look inside of myself and find where that is. And so when she said that, I was like, first of all, a humbling experience. So a lot of space for compassion and humility in this, and recognizing that if I am in the pattern of blaming, it's very likely that I will end up blaming myself, because if I work with that kind of energy outward, I will probably work with that energy inward, and finding softness in that space so that I can be in the experience that I'm having. And when I
Mm-hmm.
was able to do that and go inside of myself, I realized that I was being naive by holding you at a pedestaled place where you are going to be perfect and show up in every single way that I needed you to be. And so
Mm.
once I understood that about myself, that really that was the way I was holding myself accountable. I was
Yeah.
saying, in my situation, I would have taken care of it and I would have done everything and I would have whatever that is. And so, how could you be so naive and you not be the one to take responsibility in the way that I think that you should? And once I was able to soften into that awareness, the whole conversation and all of the energy around it shifts.
Yeah.
Everything becomes so much softer. Everything becomes so much more compassionate because I offered the compassion to myself.
Yeah. 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 Wow. What a beautiful story, and what a beautiful offering to everybody listening. There's such a there's such a strong paradigm or way that we live in where things have to be somebody's fault.
Yeah.
And this blaming paradigm, I it was one of my first waking up moments as a child where I realized, like, is there a possibility that something could actually not be anybody's fault? Or does it have to be that if something's not going the way someone doesn't like it, then someone is to blame? And noticing that either the people around may have been blaming each other or perhaps blaming themselves. Oh my God, I'm so stupid. I'm so silly. I'm so unthoughtful. I'm so naive. I should have thought of that, should have, could have.
Mm.
And there's so much that I'm hearing inside of that story that you shared about this new way, this other way to take accountability and responsibility and soften around ourselves and other when it comes to thinking about the judgments that we may have and where they come from. And compassionate communication, again, just bringing that point home again and again and again, it starts within. Peace starts within, compassion starts within. And it's like ways that we are thinking or feeling or giving it to other people is probably normally the ways that the rhetoric or the unconscious thoughts bubbles that are in our minds about our own selves that we might not even know about. So, so much compassion and shout out to all the unconscious beliefs and thoughts that are in our psyche and inside of our minds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the way that we offer ourselves this possibility in communication is starting with the awareness,
Yeah.
like noticing myself in reaction to you,
Yeah.
noticing what's triggered, noticing my immediate response to wanting to throw it back at you or be like, shut up or whatever,
Yeah.
just and just slowing it down enough to just notice because
Yeah.
in that moment is where I get to offer myself awareness within. What
Yeah.
do I need here that's being dismissed or not understood? And how can
Yeah.
I offer it to myself? So instead of this attachment to the hope that you're going to be able to give the thing that I want to me, can I notice in my awareness what it is? First of all, like to make contact with inside of myself. And then as soon as I'm able to give that to me, as soon as I was able to notice that inside of me, what do I really need from you then?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not even need at all. Maybe it's the desire to be in connection with. Maybe it's just, maybe
Yeah.
it's just because I love you and just because. And
Yeah.
less about like how I need you to fill the spot in me so that I could feel whole, so that this could be less discomfort and blah, blah, all that.
Yeah. Our audience, actually, we received some feedback about this podcast
Okay.
to make things more, to bring our thoughts and our feelings and our excitement and the things that we're talking about into a practical form where people can actually really dig their teeth into what we're talking about. So I wonder if we play it out a little bit. What a not necessarily compassionate conversation might look like, and then break it apart a little bit and then speak in a compassionate communication kind of conversation. What do you say?
I'm very excited about this.
Okay. Okay. So
So
we're gonna have a little like We're going to have a little argument, honey.
Okay.
Okay.
Definitely uncomfortable to begin with because I tend to want to avoid confrontation. So I love this challenge and I'm excited to jump into it.
Yeah.
And also like to play roles that maybe I don't want to even fully admit are alive inside of me in some ways. So what a
Totally.
cool possibility here. Okay.
Totally. So projection to projection. You start.
Okay.
Let's play like partners or some kind of like husband, wife, some type of role. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You never care to listen to what I need. All I asked you to do was take out the garbage. I don't understand why I had to come home after a long day to a house that smelled so terrible because you just totally dismissed what I needed and just left it there for me.
You're telling me I don't care about you. You don't care about me. Whenever I talk to you, you do not listen. You're just right away jumping in and saying the thing that you want to say. And you know what? I forgot the garbage one time, literally one time. When do you ever do the things all the time that you say you're going to do?
Okay, don't come at me like that. Okay. Okay. It's not just your first time. Don't pretend you're so innocent in this. Okay.
Are you
Don't
telling me I'm lying?
No, I'm just saying that you're exaggerating the situation, and that's not even fair to me because it's been many times. This wouldn't bother me so much if I didn't feel like almost all the time, I have to deal with this, and then I have to be the one. Most of the times, I just don't bring it up because you know what? I don't even feel like you're listening, so I just go and do it myself. So you think that you took it out, but you actually didn't. You actually didn't. I think that you're just in denial of yourself and taking responsibility for what it is that you're supposed to take responsibility for and to like be considerate to me. I feel like it's so inconsiderate, so dismissive.
You know what? Fine. I'll take all the responsibility. Tell me all the other things that are wrong with me. Go. Tell me. Tell me what's wrong with me. That's a good one, huh?
You want me to start that list? You want me to start the list? I have a
Yeah.
list. I have a list running. I have a list
Yeah.
running. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? When I asked you to go pick up the stuff from the cleaners, what did you pick up? You picked up your own suit. Thank you very much. My dress is still sitting in the cleaners. Yeah. Yeah. Again, not considering what I need.
Do you really
Not
have a
listening to what I'm saying.
Do you see what I have to deal with? I have a partner who has a list of things that are wrong with me. What's wrong with you? Okay, I think this is a good
Yeah.
place
Yeah. Nice.
to end. Okay.
Wow.
Let's just take a deep breath and shake off the roll.
So fun.
So fun.
A little improv, you know?
A little improv. I think we did good. I think we did good. Okay. So analyzing this conversation through the lens of compassionate communication. In NVC, for those of you who ever heard of it, it's a way of compassionate communication. And Chani and I are actually learning this book together. And NVC stands for nonviolent communication. There are 4 components to a compassionate conversation or a nonviolent communication conversation, which is observation, feeling, needs, and request. In this conversation, what happened is that instead of observing how I'm feeling, recognizing what my need is here and asking for a clear request, there is all kinds of other things taking place. A big, huge projection, right?
Yes.
Because what is a projection? Me projecting the insecurity that happens when you don't meet my need on you, when the outside thing. So that looks like maybe, perhaps, when you forget to take out the garbage, I feel unconsidered or uncared for, or it triggers a part of me that feels like people really don't hear me, right? And my need is to be heard and considered. But instead of even knowing that or saying that or pausing for a moment to feel into the rising feeling inside, I override that need and attack the outside thing. There is somebody who says this that I don't know who, Something like, instead of seeing the outside thing as a mirror, I'm paraphrasing, instead of seeing the outside thing as a mirror, we go outside of ourselves and try to attack the mirror. And that's what a projection is. And we also speak in language that's so shaming that it actually leaves the other person on to, it actually triggers or activates the other person's defense as well. Yeah. Because instead of saying, you forgot and I felt unconsidered, we say, you're lazy, irresponsible, and wrong, right? That doesn't leave, that's not talking to the part of you that forgot and the part of me that feels unconsidered. That's me labeling you as lazy and wrong. That's me giving you an identity. Now, when a person gives another and a new identity, full fight mode takes place. Oh. Yeah. Full fight mode takes place.
Which is also so natural.
So natural.
It's natural to when I am being, when the accusing aspect is not just a part of me, but you're talking directly to my whole being. Now my whole being is threatened by you. And the only thing that I'm left with naturally is to defend myself.
100%. And it is a natural experience for a human to want to defend their sense of self.
Yes.
Especially when the sense of self might feel fragile. Now, because we're in this stage of shifting, we're going to be speaking about what it could look like to have this conversation and to look at this from a different perspective and to have these conversations from a different way. Before we do that, could you read that poem that you were telling me about earlier? I think that it could be really beautiful to drop into.
This poem is from the book Nonviolent Communication, and it's chapter 3. I can handle your telling me what I did or didn't do. I can handle your interpretations, but please don't mix the two. If you want to confuse any issue, I can tell you how to do it. Mix together what I do with how you react to it. Tell me that you're disappointed with the unfinished chore you see, but calling me irresponsible is no way to motivate me. And tell me that you're feeling hurt when I say no to your advances, but calling me a frigid man won't increase your future chances. Yes, I can handle your telling me what I did or didn't do, and I can handle your interpretations, but please don't mix the two. Written by Marshall B. Rosenberg.
Yeah. So this is where the parts language comes in and parts work in general. For those of you that don't know about parts work, it is a modality created by Richard Schwartz. Some people call it IFS, Internal Family Systems. And it's based on the premise that we all are a self, a soul, a neshama, a compassionate, curious, creative, whole being. And we all have parts, all kinds of parts, all flavors of parts, created perhaps from society, from our family, from unmet needs, from genetic predisposition, etc. And these parts of us are not who we are, but they are attributes to us. The more we make these parts conscious, they aren't running unconscious programs in the background of our life, but they're invited more into our wholeness as opposed to taking us over. Yeah. Now, when we speak in parts language, we are acknowledging that you are not judgmental, but a part of me feels that a part of you is judgmental. And what that happens is it's less of an attack on a sense of self or on an essence, on an essential self, and actually an acknowledgement that I see your essential self. You have an essential self, and you also have parts of you that activate me. And what happens is when we speak in parts language, when we orient to this kind of looking at the world and at life and at ourselves, we have a much softer, compassionate way about being able to be with the parts of us that we do and that we might not like as much. And so a parts language conversation could look like, I guess I'll begin and you'll speak back. Are you cool to model that with
Yeah,
me?
let's try.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it would look like something inside of me feels really not considered and met when I ask you to take out the garbage and you don't. And I know that so often you do. And this time you didn't. And something really got activated inside of me because of it.
Thanks so much for letting me know how you feel. And I'm so sorry that I forgot and that that's the way that it felt for you. I really, I really want you to know that you are my highest consideration and I love you so much. Am I confessing my love right now?
Yes, exactly. So softer, a lot less words. And, you know, affect, which means tone of voice, body language, ways that we communicate matters just as much, if not more, than the words that we say. And something that I always think about is like when I feel like I want to speed up, that's the time for me to slow down
Mm,
because there's a feeling inside of me that feels urgent. There's a feeling that something needs to come out right now. And urgency is always the old story. Urgency is always me looking at the world through the lens of some kind of trauma or unmet need. Urgency is when I'm in self with a capital of S, when I'm in my essential self, when I'm in my soul, it feels safe for me to speak and move slowly. It even sometimes feels safe for me to be misunderstood or not fully heard or not fully seen because I can understand, see, hear, and hold myself in that moment because I'm in that essential self part. So I think of unblending and parts, and this parts were unblending from my parts to remember that I have a self, like this idea of enmeshing with other people or with our own inner child is like this idea of imagine your 3-year-old child was laying on the floor and kicking and screaming and having a tantrum, and you said something, and you lay down on the floor right next to your child and you started kicking and screaming and having a tantrum. Your child did not need you to fuse with them and become them. Your child actually needed you to unblend from them and separate them and activate your inner adult so that you can be there for them. Because I cannot be connected to something, including myself, that I am fused with. So when I am fused with my parts, I sometimes lose the current of essential energy, of self energy, of adult energy, of strength energy, of soul energy. And then I'm acting from a place of my parts or my inner child or my wounds or my coping patterns, etc. You can define them in what or my projections.
yes.
Whenever I'm in a projection conversation, it's because I'm blended with my parts as opposed to unfused so that I can see myself and others clearly. So, a really good tip to, if anybody listening here walks away with anything, it's when I feel like I need to go fast, whether it's in my thoughts racing, I need to get these words out right now, go slow.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, even my quick response in my mind to quickly defend the way that I showed up in the conversation or whatever it is, as soon as I'm like ruminating with the thought again and again to like quickly pacify whatever the discomfort is, can I slow it down and bring myself and also recognize that this is my conduit inward into my own deeper awareness of the curiosity of what's here, what's going on? Going on? Why
Yeah.
am I wanting to run? Why am I wanting to defend so quickly? I have found in my own personal experience, my defenses have been brightest guiding lights into my consciousness, into my awareness, into the possibility of higher frequency living. As soon as I got comfortable to understand that they are here to guide me, the defenses here are telling me what I believe I need to be protecting. And I get to be curious about, what am I protecting here? What's underneath this? And be curious with that and show up for those places inside of me, the parts inside of me that want to feel secure, so that the defense is covering up something that I'm feeling deeply insecure about. But then I get to be curious about that and find the inner security and find the place of ease and comfort and love, and be able to show up like that in conversation, because now I'm much less likely to be triggered when I have access to myself, my capital S self, like you say. It's like,
yeah. There was something that the way that you responded to me in the second part of the role play, when we were playing out the parts work kind of conversation, or the compassionate communication, which you in that role felt secure in yourself to not defend, right? Because there was something in my communication that didn't attack you. I took ownership over what I was feeling, and I didn't say, you need to fix it for me. I just shared it with you. And there was something about your experience in hearing that in this role play, that you were able to then hold that and be with that and not run and urge to save that. You could say sorry once, and there are times when you don't even need to apologize too much, because it's so much less about you fixing it or saving it or changing it for the other person. And it's so much more about space for intimacy and communication. And the less we feel the need for the outside to fill our needs, the more we actually have space for intimacy to share what we're sharing, because we don't need to be the one to jump up to save it just because someone else is feeling it. And we don't need them to jump up and save it just because we are feeling it. So taking a deep inventory of the parts of us that steadily manipulate because we desire the outside to save us is a really, really, really incredible place to take personal responsibility and inventory, and lean more deeply into ourselves, the universe, God, to be able to know that now that we are adults and we're not blended with our parts, we can fulfill some of our own needs, which then actually leaves space for more connection with others.
And it feels like, instead of shooting the messenger to receive the message, the sacred message that's being offered here. So when I could unblend, I no longer identify you as the terrible person bringing this into light, but more I get to be curious about, what in the way that you're expressing yourself truly is what I possibly need to take accountability for, and what possibly isn't. And I could really be able to distill that space inside of myself and really appreciate and receive the message here. If we shoot the messenger, then we blame it on them, then we lose the opportunity to receive what it's offering us. But if we really unblend the two, then we really offer ourselves the most possibility for what communication we could be creating with ourselves and others.
Totally. And Marshall Rosenberg, is that his name?
Yeah.
How do you say it? What's the middle initial?
Marshall B. Rosenberg. PhD.
We should leave that part in.
Absolutely.
Marshall B. Rosenberg says, certain ways of communicating alienate us from our natural state of compassion. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking that empathy lies inside of our ability to be present, right? Empathy can really be found when we're present, but it's really difficult to be present when we're triggered back to enmeshing with our younger self or with our parts. Then we're not present. Then we're somewhere else. Then we're at 7 years old. Then we're at 3 years old. Then we're at 2 years old. Then we're at 15 years old. We're not present in this moment experience. So there's something really important about understanding that compassionate communication really gives us the opportunity for a restoration of more empathy in this whole entire world, starting with ourselves. And if we think about where many of us are coming from, there's this, physical punishment, corporal punishment, judgment type of punishment, right? Whether it's like, I once put a poll on my stories on Instagram. How many people here were hit when they were children? And many, many, many people voted on that story. And how many people here were also called names, right? Whether it's good or bad, right? Whether it's put on the pedestal or off the pedestal, sometimes it could create, of course, for any parents listening, we do what we do and we know what we know. And at the same time, radical responsibility is the way to deep, deep, deep peace on the inside. So it's like both and, but there's something in that, right? What's a corporal punishment through the lens of nonviolent communication? The parent has a need. I don't know, the child's jumping off the walls, right? They're observing that they have a feeling. What is their feeling? They feel really overwhelmed, under-resourced, and maybe incompetent in how to deal with this situation, right? Then they might have a request. Stop jumping off the walls. Go do something, right? But instead of going through that process and doing that, instead, they're going to go with their reflex and with what they've been, guided or what they've received and give that physical or corporal punishment. The same thing goes for like judgment kinds of communications, like you're such a bad girl or you're such a good girl, right? Or be a good girl and go give your friend your snack, right? It's the same kind of like, ooh, what's happening inside? The parent has a need for her child to be seen as good. What's more deeply happening? The parent feels uncomfortable that the child might be judged by the outside. What does the parent really need? A secure sense of self, right? It has nothing to do with the child sharing their snack. So, nonviolent communication or compassionate communication is slowing down enough to hear the feelings and the needs and the voice inside so that we don't continue to project our unmet needs or our unknown needs or feelings on the people that come after us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
a practice that I practice in my home is putting myself in timeout, because in recognizing this and coming to learn this very deeply is that I'm the one who has the need that isn't met here. And my children are just children doing exactly what they're meant to be doing as children, which is playing and being wild and hanging out and trying to push their boundaries in all the different ways. This is how they find autonomy. This is how they find security in this world. And what I need to do is put myself in timeout. And so I do. I go into my room and I close the door and I take a few deep breaths and I get curious about, what do I need right now? Or what did I possibly not take care of at work or in a different conversation or somewhere else that's feeling unsettled inside of me? And that's where the irritation is coming from. And that's why when children are just behaving as children, it's actually bothering me, when on a regular day, it doesn't necessarily. So it's like this beautiful opportunity to, first of all, have a peace and quiet. So there's a perk for it, but also
you're giving yourself your need. Peace and quiet is your need.
Peace and quiet, and in that space, the curiosity to go inside and be like, why is this so activating for me right now? Why is my fuse so short? What is going on? What happened? And when I am quiet, and again, like you said, and the urgency would be to yell at my kid to stop that already, because it's so whatever. That would be like the urgent way to deal with it. But the slowing down way is put myself in timeout for a minute, take a couple deep breaths, get curious, and see what happens.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
I think that some people listening here will really be able to use that, because it's like a practical example of being able to work with our children, with ourselves, to work with ourselves, and also a practical example of a way that you slow down. That when you feel urgency, you actually take the space instead of activating more urgency and continuing to perpetuate a cycle that is unconscious. You bring that unconscious experience to consciousness when you give it a moment and you feel into what's actually going on inside. And I also feel that when we are brought up to fear punishment, whether it's corporal punishment, physical punishment, someone yelling at us, someone judging us, so therefore we're going to be good because otherwise we're going to be judged, etc., then it creates, we focus on consequences and not on our values. So it creates a really not necessarily compassionate communication environment, and it also diminishes our self-esteem, So then what we're communicating is always manipulative. It's like, let me just be good under the table. It's manipulative because it's like, let me just be good so that you don't judge me. Right? But that's not real intimacy. That's not real connection. I'm not necessarily being kind because that's how it really feels inside from my heart to your heart. It's because I just want to make sure that I don't get hurt, or I don't get hit over the head, or I don't get judged in some way, shape, or form, or shunned or abandoned.
Yeah, it makes me
So,
think of
yeah,
situations where we say yes when we really want to say no, or when we say no when we really want to say yes.
yeah,
Like that
yeah,
same
yeah.
idea where it's like, I don't feel like I have a choice. I have to be here to compliment whatever it is that's being asked of me because that's the good way to be, or that's the way I'll be acceptable and not judged for anything else. And so I'll say yes, even though that's totally wringing me out, a total disposition. Everyone in the family is going to pay for this, literally, because
Right.
I'm going to be frustrated, upset. I let myself down. I abandoned myself in some way. And so there's like there's under buzz inside of me that knows that. And so now I'm yelling at my kid and why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? And suddenly it just totally flies all over the place. And what
Yeah,
it needed
totally.
was the moment to just slow down and get more
Yeah.
honest and more compassionate to, in this yes, what am I saying no to? And in this no, what am I saying yes to? And what can I offer myself in that? And what's my most honest and compassionate way? Because ultimately, if I'm being compassionate to myself, it's less likely I will have resentments. But if I am being compassionate to you at the expense of myself, then there's a pretty short chance that I will be walking with resentments then.
Totally. And saying yes when I mean no is really a subtle manipulation, right?
Yes.
On my part to you, because I'm trying to create or dictate the way that you might feel or think about me or think about yourself in my response. So it's not actually heart to heart either. It's not actually a clear heart to heart way of being. It's me doing some kind of subtle manipulation, which we've all done,
Yes.
some kind of
100%.
subtle manipulation to make you think or feel certain things about me, as opposed to allowing what's really true to flow through in the space between us. And something that I think we're nearing our end of our conversation today, but something that I think is really important to also presence is that we have a tendency to lean towards noticing what is wrong rather than what is right, especially in relational dynamics. So it comes up a lot in conversation. And I think beginning with what we like about the person, what we appreciate about the person,
Mm.
what we see in the person's essence, especially when we're having conflict conversations, could really be helpful to soften what it is that's going on over here, because then it becomes less about me versus you and more about like, how are we going to figure this thing out in between us? And the author that I spoke about earlier, that I read the quote from earlier, Jeff Brown, has this quote about real friendships, real relationships. The thing that dictates the longevity of it is imperfection and tolerance. Tolerance
Mm.
of the fact that the closer we get to someone, the more we're going to be activated and triggered from them. And the real test in time is our tolerance for for our own, starting with our own and each other's humanity. So yeah.
Yeah. I think what I would love to offer to all of our listeners as we take all of what we just spoke about and sit with it and internalize all of the different messages that were brought into our awareness today is to start really slowly, like you offered before, and start to pay attention to the language that we use about ourselves towards ourselves.
Mm.
Because compassionate and intimate conversations start from the compassionate and intimate conversations that we have with ourselves. That's where it starts. When I can offer it to myself, that's where I get to offer it to other. And so to start listening in, how often do I tell myself and label myself and blame myself by names that are really not being very kind?
Yeah.
And when I become aware of that, there's this beautiful concept in the Torah which says, Sor me rav se tov, right? So it's like turn from the way that is not serving and move towards the way that is serving. And so in the moment where I come to recognize and I come to this awareness that by the slip of the tongue, in this really quick way, I just called myself stupid. I can't believe this. I can't under my breath, I have the possibility to stop, slow down, to be aware of that, and say, what would I love to offer to myself in this moment? What can I replace that judgment and that label for that's really true for me? Which might be sometimes I make a mistake and it's okay.
Yeah.
Something that's softer, something that's kinder, something that's, and so just to walk with that softening awareness and recognizing that we are in the power of being able to and the possibility to create that communication with ourselves, which ultimately offers the most compassionate communication with other. And so it starts with us, each one of us, in the quiet privacy of the words that we use to relate to ourselves and address ourselves. And those very small, tiny shifts of pulling one word out and replacing it with something softer and kinder that offers us the space to really communicate from the heart, that heart-centered space.
Yeah. Well, it's a really important offering. And I know for myself, in my own experience, a few years ago, I gave myself this gift of this offer. And I do not speak in these ways about myself anymore. It doesn't come out in that way. I was talking to a friend earlier and I said something about a part of me that I sometimes find unsavory, right? So much softer, more compassion, a less savory part in my experience of it, right? I know that sounds a little therapist-y and whatever, but but really, really, truly, it shifts actually our perception of ourselves, our perception of others, because peace begins within and compassion begins within. So when I can actually slow down enough to hear the words I'm saying about myself, and yeah, it might be coming because somebody spoke in those ways to us, or because we heard the adults around us speaking in those ways about themselves. But now we are the adults. Now we are the self with the capital S, and we have the capacity and the ability to shift that with slowing down and shifting our awareness. So thank you for the invitation, Chani.
Yeah, that was such a great experience. Totally loved that with you and really loved jumping into the role play. That was really cool. I'm so glad we did that.
Yeah. And inviting everyone who's listening to share with us your feedback. Share with us your feedback. We'd love to use it as a mirror to keep creating more and more focused content on what you desire to receive from us, because we want to be messengers to what you would love to learn and hear us talk about and speak about with us. So send us your feedback in all the ways. And we're so excited to receive it. And the feedback that we have received already has been so helpful for us. So we really, really, really appreciate you being here. you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next time.
Till next time. The Possibility of the Universe podcast is only possible because of you, our audience. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for listening. I'm Connie. First and foremost, I am a believer. I am a wife. I am a mother of 6 beautiful children. I am the co-owner of Mimulo, luxury florist and event production company. I am a life coach working with both individuals and couples to empower them to step into their own possibilities in this universe.
Hi, I'm Rivky, and I love life. I love heart-centered living. I love to be curious, and I love to connect with all things. I started off as a social worker and developmental therapist, and now I work as a somatic and subconscious practitioner using modalities such as somatic healing, breathwork, bodywork, hypnotherapy, and some really magical and incredible quantum healing technologies. I work with individuals, couples, run retreats and courses using these modalities to help people find the most freedom, presence, aliveness, and embodiment inside of their lives. The ways to contact us are through my website, rivkygross.com. That is spelled RIVKY dash, the straight line dash, gross, GROSS.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Chani at Muckhome Sanctuary, and myself at Rivky Gross. We are here for any and all questions and feedback through the contact form on the website, and we're so looking forward to hearing from you.